Hi, in this episode, I will add an authentication logic to the app we've built in the previous episode. If you haven't watched it, don't worry, I will paste a link to it in the comments below. Let me briefly remind you what we did last time. In server.js, we have an Express application which connects with the Mongo database, creates an AdminBro instance, passes it to the router, and uses it under the default admin path. Right now, in AdminBro options, we pass one database collection, companies. Our build router function is also very straightforward. It doesn't do any authentication so far, but we'll change that very soon. But first, let's open a terminal, run the app using the yarn command, and see how it looks right now. Point the browser under the localhost 3000 admin. In the panel, there is a company section, and each company has email, ID, name, and address. We would like to allow them to log into the system. That's why we will need to add a password field to a company schema. Go back to the code. Open the company.entity file and add a new password field here. Of course, we don't want to store raw passwords in the database, so we will encrypt it first. Now, when we go back to the page, we see a new encrypted password field. We don't want to show it to the users, so let's hide it in the user interface. In order to do that, in AdminBro options, along with the company resource, we need to pass resource options. But let's move this out to a separate file. Name it company.admin.js. Require AdminBro first, along with the company entity. Then create an empty const options. Set the type to resource options from AdminBro. And export it along with the company model as a resource property. As you can see, the editor correctly set the type of the options const. Now you can pass this all to our AdminBro options instead of the model itself. Change the require statement to admin company and copy this to the array instead of the raw company. Save it. And there is an error. It says that AdminBro cannot recognize the resource we provided in the array. So let's see what we did wrong. Aha, model is exported under the company key. So let's change that. Hit save. And we see that there are no errors in the terminal. Now it is time to write our first resource option. Under the properties key, pick our property name, which is an encrypted password. And define that it should be hidden by setting is visible to false. Notice the auto-suggestion thanks to the JSDoc type definition. Hit save and refresh the browser. Property disappeared from the form. Go back to the code. Before we move forward, let's change encrypted password that it is required. Now it is time to add a virtual property, password, which value will be encrypted. Set property type to password. We don't have this property in the database, so in action new, responsible for records creation, add a before action hook, where we will encrypt it. It is an async function, taking an original action request and returns its modified version. So by default, I will return original request, but if the request method is post, we will change it. Let's strip the request payload from password. And put the remaining fields to other params. If the password is not empty, we have to encrypt it. We'll use Argon2 library. Stop the server and install it first. Now require it on the top. We'll use its hash function, which is an async function. Now we have to return the modified request. I will use spread syntax to copy the request. And now let's change the payload. Take the other params and add encrypted password. Start our server and see how that looks so far. Refresh the browser and we see our new password property. Now let's add a record to see if that works. It will be new user, but change the name to the dash, some company, and the password will be password. Last will be the address. Hit save. Chrome browser wants to save password, so let's turn this off. But it seems to be working. But to be sure, let's go back to the code and show the encrypted password for now. Go back and refresh page one more time. And we see that the password has been encrypted. But hide the encrypted password again. Let's see one use case. What if user don't give a password? We see that there is an error, but password field is not highlighted. Open the browser's network tab and see what is happening. Hit save again. Make it a little bit bigger. So in response preview, we see that the returned record has an error, but it is assigned to encrypted password, which makes sense. And that is why it is not shown by the password property. In order to fix that, we'll have to use an after hook. This is also an async function, but it takes response as the first argument. Then it modifies it and returns it back. We will alter the response if it has record property with errors. So let's simply copy an entire error message from encrypted password to password. Go back to the browser and hit save again. Now we see the correct behavior. Okay, you probably noticed that we wrote hooks only for a new action, but they also should be applied to edit action as well. So extract them to a separate file so we can reuse them. Create actions folder inside companies and put there a new file password.hook.js. Paste the code here and start by adding the dependencies. Require Argon2 and then require AdminBro. Now change properties to const. Do the same thing with before hook. Remove obsolete colon and curly braces. Okay, it looks quite good. So now export these two hooks. Hit save. And the last thing would be to add types. Here we will use after type. It requires a type of response attribute. It will be action response. Then type before action. Hit save. I don't see any errors, so let's go back to company admin and reuse them. Now replace argon2 with our new hooks. Perfect. Scroll down and add them also to edit action. But when I look at it now, it doesn't say anything about hook's purpose, so let's rename them to something more meaningful, like password after hook and password before hook. Put them in a separate rows and change how they are passed to actions property. Now, since we have the ability to create new companies, let's allow them to log in to the app. Go to the admin router file. In the previous episode, we used build router function from the AdminBro Express plugin. Now we will change it to build authenticated router, which takes extra arguments. First will be the authentication options with cookie name, cookie password, and the most important, authenticate async function, which takes two arguments, email and a password. The function returns either null or logged in admin, so let's implement it. We'll need argon2, so let's require it on the top. And also we'll need company model, so let's require it as well. And no one noticed the typo here, so let's fix it. Go back to our authenticate function. So first we need to find a company by an email which user put in the login form. And if company exists, let's use argon2 verify method to compare our encrypted password with user input. This is an async function. If it succeeds, return the user. Otherwise, return null. Hit save, and there is an error. We need to install authenticated router dependency express session. So let's do that. Now start the server and go back to the page. Refresh it. And now we see a login screen. Let's give some imaginary data. And we see a wrong email and or password error, which is good. Try out the real data. And we are in. Logged as new user. Now go back to the code one more time. We see that there are two warnings in the terminal. They come from the Express session. You can read about them on the project page, but long story short, you have to pass two extra properties to session options, which is the fourth argument. Set resave to false and save uninitialized to true. Again, you can read more about them on the Express session documentation. But now, warnings are gone. By default, all sessions are stored in memory. So now, when I reload the page, I will be logged out. This is because NoDaemon restarts the application every time we hit save, which is quite annoying. So in order to fix that, we will have to use some permanent session store. We are already using Mongo, so let's use Mongo store. Install it first. It is connect Mongo package. We will use Mongoose, so require it on top. And below add Express session. Create a new Mongo store. And we will pass our session as an argument. Scroll down and pass the store to the settings like this. And let's pass Mongoose collection here. Okay, rerun the server and let's go back to the page. Log in again and go back to the code. Hit save, which triggers no daemon. Now, when we reload the page, we are still logged in because our session data is stored in MongoDB. And this is it. I hope you liked this episode. Next time, we'll create a profile page and upload a photo. Make sure to subscribe the channel and see you next time.